Story is an often misunderstood aspect of fighting games, treated poorly by the community who play it and an afterthought to the people who make it. While most fighting game stories are globe-trotting anime adventures or poorly thought out attractions for casuals, fighting game lore is a fascinating thing to some and an embarrassment to others. I happen to fall into both categories, so join me as I regale you with some of the many stories told to us from fighting games. It's been a couple of years since the criminal organisation Shadaloo, led by its megalomaniac dictator Bison, plotted to control the world with the use of their psychodrive, a device that harnessed Bison's own psychopower with the intent of destroying the world. Following his failed attempt to steal the wandering fighter Ryu's body to use as a host for his ever-expanding powers, Bison was stopped by Ryu and his former student Rose, who managed to once again destroy Bison's body, though the dictator escaped death by possessing Rose's soul, something that the two were revealed to have shared parts of. With Bison presumed dead and Shadaloo all but defunct, the multitude of people still invested in its downfall returned to their normal lives, though some still keep up the fight to fully right all the wrongs caused by the cartel. One such person is the Air Force Major Guile, who had hunted down Shadaloo after his best friend Charlie Nash went missing while investigating them years ago. Despite not knowing that Charlie was actually killed by Bison, the years of silence following Shadaloo's defeat have left Guile feeling less and less confident in believing that his friend is still alive somewhere. For the Interpol agent Chun-Li, she herself still holds out hope that her father Dorai is still alive, despite Bison's claims he had killed him. For Bison himself, he has spent the years since his defeat inhabiting Rose's body while he waits for the remnants of Shadaloo's scientists to prepare him a new copy of his original form. Upon his new body being ready, Bison finally leaves Rose and enters it, leaving Rose unaware of what had been happening during her time spent possessed. With Bison now back in the realm of the living, he quietly rebuilds Shadaloo in preparation for his revenge, wanting to pay back the ones that had defeated him. For Bison, however, he still strongly desires Ryu's body as a host and begins forming a new plan in order to bring the fighter to him. Upon gathering together the rest of his four kings, Balrog, Vega and a reluctant Sagat, Bison formally announces the Second World Warrior Tournament and begins purposely spreading intel that himself and Shadaloo were the ones behind it, as a means to draw out those who wish to see his defeat. The news of another World Warrior Tournament sends shockwaves across the world as many fighters start preparing to compete. Guile and Chun-Li are immediately suspicious of the tournament and make plans to enter it in the hopes of finding Bison and taking him down for good. Guile, however, fails to tell Chun-Li that he has abandoned his family in pursuit of Bison, wanting vengeance for Charlie over staying with them. Ryu, still travelling across the world in search of strong opponents, soon hears about the new World Warrior Tournament and decides to enter, hoping to fight his old friend Ken Masters and rival Sagat at the competition. However, Ryu still worries about the power of the Satsui no Hado within him and his fated clash with his master's killer Akuma, but wonders if Akuma will even enter as no one has heard from him in years. To help him focus, Ryu now dons his friend's red hairband as a reminder to keep himself on the path of a true warrior after their experiences of being controlled by Bison some years ago. Having not spoken to Ken since they last parted ways, Ryu finds the time to write Ken a letter, telling him about his experiences training and expressing his hope of seeing Ken at the tournament. Back in America, Ken has softened up since his last encounter with Ryu, now spending his time with his girlfriend Eliza instead of training. Upon hearing of the World Warrior Tournament, Ken at first shows no interest in taking part, but he soon receives Ryu's letter and reads it. The letter stirs something within Ken, who realizes that he has given up on his fighting spirit. Inspired by the tales of Ryu's constant immersion in daily training and fighting strong opponents, Ken decides to enter the tournament in the hopes of meeting his old friend and fighting him once again. 8 other competitors answer the call of the World Warrior Tournament, each hailing from multiple countries across the globe. Having only journeyed into the open world for the first time some years ago, the wild beastman Blanca hears of the tournament from a village near his jungle and decides to enter it, having gained a taste for street fighting following his time spent with his friends Dan Hibiki and Sakura Kasugano. The great yoga master Dawson forces himself to return to fighting at the behest of his village, who once again require money to keep themselves from suffering and poverty. Hoping the money from the tournament will be enough to help his people, Dawson once again finds himself discarding his pacifist ways. Edmund Honda, a famous sumo wrestler from Japan, enters the competition with the goal of proving to the world that sumo wrestling is the best fighting style out there, having felt like the sport was receiving continuous disrespect outside of Japan. Zangief, the Red Cyclone of Russia, enters the tournament on the orders of his president, who fears the re-emerging presence of Shadaloo will have an impact on his goal of returning the Soviet Union to its former glory. Having continued to gain worldwide recognition following his starring role in Street Fighter, the famous movie star Fei Long soon finds himself growing tired of acting out numerous fake fight scenes and decides to enter the tournament, with the hopes of gaining some experience and respect as a legitimate martial artist. After being scouted on the street years ago by his now manager Bob, Jamaican music sensation and renowned kickboxer DJ enters the tournament hoping to find some inspiration for his next album, desiring a new rhythm that will continue his great success. Thunderhawk of the Thunderfoot tribe enters the tournament with the goal of regaining the land of his people after it was stolen from them by Shadaloo when he was a child. While hoping to win and restore his tribe to their former glory, Tearhawk also hopes to find his missing lover Julia, who has once again gone missing from his tribe after he rescued her from Shadaloo years ago. The last competitor to join the tournament is a young woman named Cammy White. Cammy, suffering from amnesia after an unknown incident, was found and taken in by Colonel Keith Wolfman, leader of the MI6 Special Operations Group Delta Red, where she was given a name and a place to live. In truth, Cammy is the Shadaloo creation once known as Killer Bee, and is actually a clone of M. Bison himself. Having been rescued by Vega after the Psychodrive's destruction, Vega left the amnesiac Killer Bee at Delta Red's headquarters before fleeing, hoping for her to blossom into a beautiful warrior of her own free will. While she has no recollection of her past, Cammy is able to naturally retain her fighting ability from her time as one of Shadaloo's dolls, making her an incredibly valuable asset to Delta Red. Upon hearing of the Second World Warrior tournament and that M. Bison himself might be involved, Cammy can't shake the feeling that she has some form of connection to him. Unable to ignore it, Cammy receives permission to enter the tournament solo in the hopes of remembering her past. With the 12 competitors all gathered, the tournament finally begins as M. Bison eagerly awaits for the entrance to whittle down to the few fighters he wishes to take his revenge on. As the tournament continues on and several fighters are knocked out of the competition, Dhalsim makes his way through the bracket, but soon comes to the realization that no matter the reason, any form of combat deeply goes against his pacifist beliefs. Wanting to raise the money through any other means, Dhalsim withdraws from the tournament and retires from fighting. As he returns home on his elephant, Dhalsim expresses his joy at being able to see his family again, feeling that he's been gone for too long. During the tournament, Ryu and Ken finally reunite for the first time in years. Eager to see how his training has gone, Ken gladly challenges Ryu, knowing full well that he will be easily beaten due to losing focus on martial arts. Ken's prediction is accurate as he is suddenly defeated by Ryu. Ken, however, is not upset by the defeat and shows his respect towards how far Ryu has come. Understanding that he needs to continue to regain his fighting spirit, Ken bids farewell to Ryu and exits the tournament, content with his upcoming journey. Eventually, only 4 fighters remain in the competition: Ryu, Chun-Li, Guile and Cammy. They continue onwards in the tournament and each face a member of the 4 kings. Guile and Chun-Li face Balrog and together manage to beat him. Upon his defeat, Guile and Chun-Li manage to coerce the location of M. Bison from Balrog, discovering that he is once again hiding in Thailand. The two decide to head straight there and face Bison, but are unable to arrest Balrog before he escapes. Cammy faces Vega in Spain and manages to defeat him inside his own caged-off arena. Upon defeating Vega, Cammy gets a familiar feeling from him, but Vega chooses to not reveal anything of her past to her, instead being satisfied with seeing how beautiful she has become in her independence. Vega tells Cammy that her answers await her in Thailand before leaving. Determined but nervous to find out the truth behind her past, Cammy leaves Spain behind and heads for Thailand. Ryu, however, is invited directly to Thailand, where he is met by none other than Sagat. The two rivals prepare for their rematch, having spent the years since their last meeting training heavily. The long-awaited fight begins, and this time Ryu, who is no longer holding back, once again defeats Sagat. While Sagat is not satisfied with the outcome, he is left feeling like Ryu continues to grow more and more as a fighter each time they meet and respects him for it. No longer feeling like he requires the help of Shadaloo to gain what he wants, Sagat tells Ryu where he can find Bison and leaves, officially retiring from Shadaloo. The two rivals leave each other with respect and look forward to their next fight. As Ryu arrives at the temple where M. Bison has set up his new base of operations, he is soon joined by Chun-Li and Guile, who prepare to arrest Bison for his crimes. The dictator then greets his guests, revealing that he had planned for them to all make it this far. Guile charges at Bison and begins asking Bison if he remembers him and Charlie. Bison tells Guile that he isn't the runt that he was back then and taunts him into killing him. Guile almost goes through with murdering Bison, but is stopped by his wife and daughter, who have managed to track Guile down to Thailand after he left them to pursue Bison. Guile's wife Julia tells Guile that killing Bison won't bring back Charlie, but will instead just make Guile a murderer like Bison. Julia begs Guile to return home and start over, but Guile is ashamed of himself for having abandoned them in the first place. Guile's daughter Amy, however, assures Guile that they both still love him and just want him to return home. Finally seeing reason, Guile refuses to kill Bison and leaves the Shadaloo base with his family. As he goes, Guile tells Chun-Li and Ryu that he has faith they will defeat Bison for him and end his reign of terror. Bison then turns his attention to Ryu and demands a fight from him in the hopes of defeating him and gaining the host body he had longed for. Ryu accepts Bison's offer and engages him in the finals of the tournament. However, before either man can throw a single attack, a dark shadow flies into the temple and heads straight for Bison. As Ryu looks on, the shadow hits Bison with a devastating attack, seemingly killing him instantly. The shadow then reveals itself to be none other than Akuma, who has come to see how Ryu has fared in his battle with the Dark Kado since their last bout. Akuma and Ryu then engage in battle, but for as much as Ryu has gotten stronger since his master's death, Akuma's strength has increased tenfold. Unable to overcome Akuma's attacks, Ryu is soundly defeated. Akuma is disappointed that Ryu still fights the killing intent within him, and tells him that he will only put up with Ryu's fight for so long before he simply kills him. Akuma then vanishes as quickly as he had appeared, leaving Ryu and Chun-Li to deal with the aftermath. Chun-Li investigates Bison's body and realizes that he is dying. Ryu notices that Akuma attacked Bison with the lethal Shungoku Satsu attack, a move that is only used by those who accept the Dark Kado. Though the move is usually instantly fatal, Bison is able to hold on by using his Psycho Power, but the strength of Akuma's attack is too much for Bison to recover from. As he lays dying, Kami suddenly arrives at the temple in search of Bison. Kami, desperate for answers before he dies, demands Bison tell her about her past, only remembering Bison's attempt to get the dolls to kill her. Bison, however, decides to play one last evil trick on Kami and lies about their past, telling the naive amnesiac that they were both in fact lovers prior to her memory loss. The revelation shocks Kami, who is unable to accept that her and Bison once loved each other. Kami flees from the temple and returns home before anyone can stop her, especially Chun-Li, who finally recognizes Kami as the little girl she had seen in the crumbling Shadaloo base years ago. After Kami leaves, Bison finally dies, unable to use his Psycho Power to hold off the raging demon any longer. Hoping that he will actually stay dead for good this time, Ryu and Chun-Li decide to part ways, hoping to meet each other again as friendly rivals instead of chasing after Shadaloo. With Bison's third death, Shadaloo once again crumbles without a leader, and the world hopes that the evil organization will not rise up again anytime soon. Confident in Shadaloo's destruction, Chun-Li feels like she no longer needs to investigate the cartel and visits her father's grave. Chun-Li tells her father that his death is avenged and that he can finally rest in peace. Chun-Li then wonders what she should do with her life, no longer driven by thoughts of revenge. Torn between living an easy life or continuing her work as an Interpol agent, Chun-Li decides to relax and live her life as a young single girl, though she still has to use her fighting skills to fend off drunk men. After returning home, Gal settles back into the family man life and spends time with his wife and daughter. Noticing something different about him, Julia asks Gal what's wrong, but Gal simply states that nothing is wrong as he feels like he's waking up from a long nightmare. Gal expresses his love for his family as they enjoy their new peaceful life. After becoming a fan favourite thanks to his matches being broadcasted across the world, Blanca is soon met by a woman who addresses him as Jimmy, Blanca's real name. The woman asks Blanca if she is his long lost son, but Blanca is unsure why he would be. The woman explains that her son had gone missing after a plane crash over Brazil years ago and that she had thought him dead. The woman then recognises Blanca's anklet, a memento that she had given her son for his birthday before the plane crash. Now convinced that he is her son, Blanca and his mother tearfully reunite. Having been knocked out of the tournament earlier, DJ finally discovers the rhythm he had been searching for. DJ debuts his new track to the world to great success, with fans in packed stadiums around the world jamming to his new kind of music. After making waves through the tournament, Fei Long is approached by a movie director who praises him for his skill. The director tries to convince Fei Long to agree to star in a new movie, but Fei Long refuses, feeling like his acting skills aren't worthy of the previous cinema legends. Fei Long instead decides to dedicate himself to training for real fights while passing his knowledge on to others. Returning to Hong Kong, Fei Long begins teaching his craft to millions of students who carry on his style for generations. Despite losing out in the tournament, Zangief still returns home a hero and is greeted by the president, who tells Zangief that he did his country proud by showing how strong the Soviet Union truly is. To recognise his achievements, Zangief, the president and his comrades perform a celebratory dance as Zangief compliments the president on his skills. T-Hawk returns to the home of his people, now ownerless following Shadaloo's destruction. As he stares out at the barren land, T-Hawk feels like he's where he belongs and starts making plans to reconstruct the land for his people, vowing to never let it be desecrated again. Following his escape from Chun-Li and Guile, Balrog disappears into the underworld and uses his Shadaloo connections to become the #1 player in Las Vegas. Having finally made his dream come true, Balrog soon surrounds himself with money and women, overjoyed at his new life. Vega, meanwhile, retires to his mansion in Spain and continues to worship his own beauty while ignoring his own narcissism. Looking forward to enjoying a life without being under M. Bison's thumb, Vega returns to lurking in the shadows. Following his retirement from Shadaloo, Sagat thinks of his former title as the Emperor of Muay Thai and how he lost it multiple times to Ryu. Deep down, Sagat knows that Ryu's victories are more than just through luck, as the great scar on his chest reminds him. Sagat vows to never underestimate Ryu again and promises that the next time they meet, only one of them will survive. Cammy returns from Thailand but still struggles to handle M. Bison's words about them being lovers. Wondering how she could have fallen in love with a man as vile as him, Cammy is soon joined by her Delta Red teammates who plan to return home with Cammy after completing their mission. Cammy, however, is unsure if she should return with Delta Red, worried that she isn't the person they thought she was. Delta Red try to ease Cammy's concerns, telling them that there's no way what Bison said could be true. Cammy finally accepts her teammates' reassurances and returns home with them, happy that Bison can now be scarred by his own defeat as he had scarred her long ago. As Ken starts his journey home, he is met by Eliza, who had followed Ken in the hopes of being together with him again. Ken is touched by Eliza's love for him and decides to marry her, something he had promised himself to do after defeating Ryu in a fair fight. Despite his loss to Ryu, Ken feels like he's ready for marriage and happily weds Eliza, wanting to be with her forever. Ryu, meanwhile, returns to the open road, Akuma's victory in words disturbing him greatly. Already wanting to seek out his next challenge, Ryu doesn't look back as he continues on, ready for whatever lies ahead.
We await your return, warrior.